Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newcastle Fast FM. This is the M&M show with me, Mariam, and
me, Marium Khan.
Assalamu alaikum. And me, Marium Zamir. And today we're going to be talking about the power of atomic habits. On the show, we're going to try and summarize the key insights and ideas of some really, really good self-development books. So inshallah, over the weeks, we'll cover 4 books. And they're going to be on productivity and self-development. And today we're going to be talking about the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is all about the power and processes of building good habits and breaking bad ones. So yeah.
Cool. So Mariam, so should we have it like a system in place, or if people can't recognize our voices? I'm Mariam 2, and the one who's Mariam 1.
I think you're just speaking a deep voice.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a good point, actually. I'm sure they'll be able to distinguish.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm Mariam 2. So
the Sunderland Mariam.
The Sunderland Mariam. So so Mariam, I'm just going to ask you a question before you begin. For those people like myself who are yet to read the book, it's still on my reads, and it's really highly rated, isn't it?
It's really good.
It comes recommended. I've seen on Amazon there's like thousands and thousands of reviews of this book, Atomic Habits, by who was it by again?
James Clear.
James Clear. So do you mind giving a quick rundown for people like myself and listeners about what it actually covers?
Yeah.
An overview of the book.
So inshallah we'll go through a bit more of a detailed overview, but generally speaking, like I said, it's a book on building solid habits systematically. The book it's really good for adopting the mindset required to actually stick with good habits. So it's not just about building goals and building habits, but how to maintain them. And so through examples of sports, business, education, he uses evidence from psychology, neuroscience. The book explains the science of the practical implications of how tiny habits and minuscule changes can actually grow into like life-altering outcomes and ultimately help us hopefully lead a happier and healthier and more productive life. So it is all about productivity, and he goes through it in a step-by-step way, which inshallah we'll get to. But it's brilliant. It's one of the best books on self-development and productivity that I've read. We'll get onto the details. I won't go into it yet. But before we do, we have a competition and a giveaway, inshallah. So our producer, inshallah, will be putting onto the screen. We've got a new system now. So obviously, due to the current situation, we are not in the usual radio station, so this is all a bit new to me, so do bear with me if I'm a bit slow on the technology part of it. But yes, so we've got a question today, and the question is, if our wonderful producer can put it up on the screen, if you could all share with us habits that you'd like to make and break this Ramadan, and how you're going to go about doing that. Any tips, any tricks? Obviously, we'll be going through some helpful tips that James Clear shares in the book. But if you have any of your own, please share. And the best tip will win a Barakah box. What are you going to say? Mariam, what is a Barakah box?
Oh, yeah. So, guys, the fasting's getting to me, so do pardon me for being a bit slow. Slow today, right?
It's that time of the day, subhanAllah.
Slow every day, really, outside of Ramadan. So, yeah, so Mariam, number 1, what is the Barakah box? Can you enlighten us?
Yes, so the Barakah box, a new business, and the Barakah box itself is an artisanal graze box, if you like, full of luxury sunnah foods. So 99% of the box is are all sunnah foods, so all have various benefits and obviously go with the prophetic tradition. So there's like hand-dipped chocolate dates, there's a real nice selection of cheeses, figs, and there's nuts, but there's a banana loaf in there, not to plug it too much, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. And like I said, the person with the best tip will be given a free Barakah box, inshallah. But yes, great for iftar and great for gifting as well. If you check the page, it's a really nice gift to give as well.
And guys, can I just say, alhamdulillah, Mariam number 1 gave me the first box, and it was amazing. I ate it. Me and my sister, as soon as she gave it to us, we were like munching it in the car. Obviously, this is just before Ramadan, by the way. Not just grassing myself up here. Yeah. And it is absolutely beautiful, especially these like fancy cheeses that are in there. So if you've got like a savoury tooth or a sweet tooth, there's like a nice little mixture for everyone there for you guys to all enjoy, inshallah. And also, I just realised, Mariam, Mariam number one, there's a new item related to the Baraka box.
Yeah, so as well as the Graze box, the Baraka box will also be doing gift jars. So there's other products to come, but there's a date jar which is really beautiful. I don't know about anybody else, but I've always held my dates in a particular jar. Generally speaking, but especially in Ramadan, it's nice to have that. It's always nice to have dates in the house anyway, but to have a specific place for them is quite nice. Another thing to mention in this very shameless plug of mine is that 25% of all profits will go to new Muslims. So definitely a worthy kind of cause, and delicious too. So anyway, moving on, back to the book. So that's our giveaway. So do get in touch and enter for a chance to win the Baraka box. So back to Atomic Habits. Mariam, you said that you haven't read it yet, have you? Not yet. So I've just finished reading it. I read it about a month ago. But there are so many practical tips in there. It's really, really good. Like I said, it's a really good book for adopting the mindset required to actually stick with the habits. We all try and change our habits, but to actually stick with them is, a different matter. And I think it's, especially in Ramadan, it's especially appropriate, breaking those habits, because as we know, Ramadan is not just abstaining from food and drink and all that kind of thing. It is, here for us to break. Can I ask a question, Mariam, just before you continue? So this is Mariam 2, guys, by the way, just to remind you. So Mariam number 1, can I just ask, do you know, we've got so many chances to buy things like journals, productivity journals. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them from really fancy paper type of shops. Some people do things years ago. The big thing years ago is things like bullet journals, and everything's always related. I just had to go, oh no. I do love a bullet journal. And it's such a big market, isn't it? It's such a booming business in terms of journaling, mindset type of things, productivity things. So do you think that this book offers anything new compared to what's already on the market in terms of ideas or an investment? It's quite difficult to say, because I think first of all, I think the reason that these kind of products and these ideas have really kind of launched, in particular the last couple of years, is I think as a generation we are just so overwhelmed with stuff, and I think we have so little time. You would think with all the kind of conveniences and technological advances we'd have more time, but unfortunately we don't. And so time management is so that's something people crave these days. And I think that's why this kind of idea of bullet journaling and managing your time is so is kind of so, not I don't want to say trendy, but is so popular now. As far as the book, it's quite difficult to say, just because I myself take a real keen interest in it. So because I've read so much on it and I watch a lot on it, on the subject, there are some things that are new to me, but I have kind of heard things similar. Whereas somebody who perhaps is new into the topic or the subject, I think that definitely are some good juicy nuggets to take from it. So cool. Yeah, I definitely think so. I would definitely recommend it. It was a really easy read. I actually I didn't even read it. I listened to an audiobook, and it's really, really easy, really accessible, really well structured. So yeah. So Mariam, right, before we go, are we going to learn about some of the habits today? We are. We're going to grab a summary of the book and the principles in the book, and then hopefully we're going to, at the last half, we're going to go through a few tips on how he explains we should build our habits. Excellent. So before we go right into that, we've got a question that's on the screen from one of our YouTubers. Any advice when you can't focus in the last few hours of fasting? That's by Wolverine Scratch. So do you have any personal advice? So when, most people throughout the day of Ramadan, they can sort of make themselves busy. Some people feel like they've accomplished so much more in one day of fasting than they might have done in the previous week. But in the last few hours, when you get sluggish, what do you recommend personally? Okay, so there's a part of the show that we're going to talk about that will help with this. But just from the top of my head, I would actually say napping. If time allows it. Obviously, a lot of us are working from home now. And so if you can kind of squeeze a nap in during the day, it just allows you to be a little bit fresher for the afternoon and this time where we do kind of dip and flag a little bit. So I would say that. Do you have any ideas?
I think that's good. It's the lost art of having siestas.
Yes.
So for those of you that don't know, a siesta is like where you have a midday break, sort of nap, and that's something that we should be doing anyways. I would personally say, even outside of Ramadan, because it means that when you can let your body rest throughout the day after waking up, inshallah, early after Fajr morning, getting some work done, which is where you got most of the barakah in the day, which is straight after Fajr, that time, rather than going straight back to sleep. It means that you can afford to actually have a little nap in the day to rejuvenate yourself throughout the night, so that you can spend the nights in ibadah or extra ibadah. And that's something that we should be doing in Ramadan as well. So for me personally, one of the things that help is also having a nap throughout the day. And obviously a nap, by definition, is something that's like at least less than 90 minutes. It's not just, it's not like a full-on 4-hour snooze or anything like that. And also for me, making intention. So I know that we're talking about habits and stuff today, and one of the things people say is that you should write down what you want to achieve, but making that intention to want to, for example, increase in your Quran recitation in this month, squeeze in a workout, because life doesn't just stop just because you're fasting. Life continues on. So making that intention to make your days as productive as possible means that, inshallah, we can translate these good habits that we try to build in this month outside in the next 11 months of the Islamic year.
I agree. And what I would add to that actually also is prioritize. So as you said, the morning time where there's more barakah and you have more focus as well, do the tasks that are perhaps a little bit more difficult for you. So and then leave the rest for the afternoon. So if perhaps in your plan and your set of goals, you have that you want to watch a certain series of lectures or audio lectures, for some, that's going to be a bit easier than perhaps doing some learning or even recitation. So I would say leave those kind of less taxing tasks to this part of the day where, if that is kind of approaching and we are all flagging a little bit. So that's kind of something that I would add. So leave your kind of easier tasks and goals to this part of the day and prioritize, as you said, the rest till the morning. So yes, I hope that answers your question. Hopefully the rest of the show as well will touch upon some tips to help you as well.
We've got another question that's not on the screen yet, but someone's asked, now it's on the screen, can I sleep if I'm too tired near iftar, because this person works from 9 till 5? So what do you recommend?
So the person works 9 till 5.
Can they sleep if they're too tired near iftar time? Of course,
I can see why not.
It's probably actually, like we just said to the previous questioner, it's actually recommended that you rest during the day, so that you can spend the nights in worship. And this is actually one of the virtues of Ramadan as well, is that you spend the nights in worship, and it's not just meant to be your usual sort of night that you spend in front of the TV or just trying to sleep. So in a way, Ramadan is one time of the year where we invert our days slightly. We're not supposed to just waste our time sleeping throughout the day as well, but just so that we can stand up in the nighttime prayers, whether that's Taraweeh or Qiyam al-Layl or any nighttime prayers. And this is one of the sort of habits of the Prophet, peace be upon him, as well, or what, maybe not necessarily just a habit, but one of the virtues of his life that we can learn from is follow in his footsteps and follow in the footsteps of the companions, the righteous companions that came after him as well. And try to emulate how do they worship Allah best. Like these are the companions of the Prophet of Allah who used to, as well as the Prophet, peace upon him, who used to stand for hours in the standing position of the Salah, who used to be bent over in ruku for a long time, who used to be in sujood for such a long time that, sometimes they didn't even know, is this person okay? So they were engaged in so much worship towards Allah in the night time. So of course, I personally would highly recommend definitely having a nap if it's gonna help you to renew your intention, because if you make that intention, I'm gonna sleep for the sake of Allah so that I can worship him better in the night, then you'll actually get rewarded, inshallah, for making that intention to nap during the day. Because now your napping during the day is going to be an act of ibadah in itself, because you've made the intention to worship Allah better in the night, not worship him with tiredness or fatigue. So I hope that makes sense.
No, that was perfect.
And may Allah reward you guys for asking those questions.
Anything else?
So someone, these are all from the YouTube sort of comments. Someone said, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for that. So someone else has asked, Wolverine best. Okay, so one commenter is replying to the other commenter saying, it's best to be focused on something to keep your mind busy, to do some work at house or something. So yeah, so basically just looking after your household. And I'm not just talking about women doing certain roles or men doing certain roles. Both men and women playing their parts in the household, including children. Everyone playing their part, so it becomes easier lessen the burden for each family member. So it's not just like expect one family member to do all the cooking and that type of sort of situation. So when you split the tasks in the household, that can also be, inshallah, an act of ibadah towards Allah. Again, if you do it with the intention of it being a way to worship Allah by helping your family out. Again, following in the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who used to help his family out around the household. So an example of how to be, a great husband, one of the best, husbands to his wives. So splitting that task load for the sake of Allah, again, you'll inshallah become an act of worship towards Allah.
And it's a beautiful bonding experience as well, especially when there's children there doing everything together, setting the table, preparing the food, that kind of thing. It's quite nice. I'm just looking at the comments, Sahri food recommendations.
So should we finish off answering these questions and then we'll come back to your...
Okay, yeah.
I'll do this one question and then we'll...
Sahri food recommendations. It's not really on topic, but I think it's each to their own, really. I like soup. I'm really sad. I mean, not saying that I always eat this, but I prefer like soups, smoothies, salads. Not because I try to be healthy, the taste of those. But then, although I was walking through town today and I passed, because all the outdoor seating is now out and live and kicking. I went past a pizza place and I smelt loads of pizza. So obviously, what we'd recommend is healthy, nutritious things. It goes along with what Mariam was saying about, worshipping through the night. If you're going to eat something unhealthy and heavy, it's not really going to help towards your ibadah and your nighttime ibadah. So something light and something nutritious that's going to give you the energy to worship through the night and sustain you, I would say. I can't think of anything in particular. What can you think of anything in particular?
For me, I'm probably one of the worst people to ask this question because I cannot eat anything at suhoor time. So,
it was suhoor. I was thinking iftar. It same applies for suhoor anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So suhoor time, so I just have water. And the reason why I do that is very simply, like the reason why I force myself to have something like water or dates for suhoor, I can't eat because I find it very hard to eat at that time when I'm tired. Is because of the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he told us that, have something, even if it's like, I'm just paraphrasing it here, even if it's like half a day, because you get the barakah of your fast, is in, delaying your suhoor as close as possible to Fajr time, to the point where even until you hear the adhan for Fajr, you should be eating and drinking. So delaying it as close as time to the possible time of Fajr, and having something is better than nothing. It's not just about what types of food, it's about actually making sure that you have something. And then obviously the opposite is true for iftar as well, where you will be rewarded for rushing to break your fast as soon as Maghrib begins. As soon as you're confident if Maghrib has hit, sunset has hit, then you should rush to break your fast. So in terms of habits, food recommendations you can get all day long from food bloggers. But in terms of habits, making sure that you have a habit to have suhoor as close as possible to Fajr time. And another habit for Ramadan is making sure you do not delay your iftar as well. Unless, of course, you have a little bit of doubt, add a minute or something. But unless you're completely certain it's a sunset, make sure you break your fast on time. This is where the barakah lies, as we're told by the Prophet, peace upon him.
Beautiful answer. Beautiful. I beg your pardon. I was thinking iftar. I would agree with, I think Mariam has put it perfectly. And so, yeah, I would actually agree with that. And I do find it difficult as well. So dates and water for me, for suhoor, for iftar, that's a different story. But yeah, that's perfect. Any other comments?
I'm trying to reduce my coffee addiction.
I would say, it's probably too late now, but I would definitely say, because I know a lot of people that kind of have that caffeine addiction, for next year, inshallah, Allah accepts this from us and grants us the ability to, take part in Ramadan next year too. Just do it beforehand. So a month before, we're encouraged anyway to start slowly fasting and creating those habits of when Ramadan does come round with kind of like in the mode. So I would say start reducing your caffeine intake about a month before, but yeah, that's not really going to work for this year, really, is it?
I don't know. So the Dawa fan who's asked that question, or who's made that comment rather, I'm trying to reduce my coffee addiction. I don't know what type of people like coffee for different reasons. I only like coffee because of the taste. I don't actually care about the caffeine.
Same.
Is it you the same?
I'm exactly the
so
same.
I don't care about the caffeine element. So I actually buy more decaf coffee than I do caffeinated coffee, because I like the taste. So maybe that's one of the ways that you can get rid of your coffee addiction, is because obviously caffeine is a drug in that sense. So one of the ways you can do it is to sort of do what I'm doing, is just replace your coffee with decaf to make it easier for you to get rid of that addiction, if that helps. And for me personally, I find that helps a lot. And Ifrat Alam Jishan has said, I don't sleep after suhoor, so to get rid of my sleeping habit in Fajr. What does that mean? So I don't sleep after suhoor? So the stay awake, to stay awake, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exactly it. So Mariam, I don't know if you're familiar with what the recommendation of the Prophet peace be upon him was, but from the top of my head, I don't want to say anything incorrect either. But we're supposed to stay awake, not just in Ramadan, but outside of Ramadan. Stay awake after Fajr, get your work done. After Fajr, don't go to sleep, because the barakah, as we said, the barakah in our time, this is actually linked to our habits that we have in our lives. The barakah Allah has given us in our time is actually at Fajr time. This hence why a lot of people feel tranquil when they get up to pray Fajr, and then they get some work done. They can feel the blessing, they can literally feel the blessings in that time. Whereas being a night owl, where you force yourself to stay awake, can be harder, because one of the reasons for that might be because we're not feeling the barakah in our time. And the recommendation of the Prophet was also the opposite when it came to Isha time. As soon as you pray Isha, you should. And that's something that's like a lost art, or a lost art of habits or something.
Yeah.
So again,
lost habits.
I know, but we want to talk about the book, but I think because a lot of the commenters,
it's about habits really. So we're still on topic, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So exactly, because we're now looking at habits related to Ramadan, which is a nice sort of segue link, if that's a word.
It is now.
Inshallah. So I hope that helps. Inshallah, may Allah make it easy for you, Ifrat, to stay awake after Fajr and get the blessings. Make it easy on all of us.
Ameen, ameen. Yeah, I definitely agree. If you've got any more comments or questions, please do share them. But I think another thing is, if we want to change our lives, we're often taught to think big. We're often taught to think of drastic changes, extreme diets, or working out in particular, like every single day, high intensity interval workouts, all that kind of thing. But if we could change or make transformations through small tweaks, that is kind of the key, and that is what the book kind of teaches, making the small tweaks kind of to our daily routines. We really seem to overestimate the effect of single actions and small improvements, and because over time it's a small improvements that do have the larger effect. But I think, unfortunately, in the society that we're in, instant gratification and all that, it's kind of lost. We'll get to that later as well. So it's the book kind of teaches that the compound effects of hundreds of small decisions or small habits that over time accumulate to produce, they're the ones that accumulate to produce remarkable results. And they're the things that change our lifestyle, our behaviors and identities. And it's another sunnah, the sunnah of doing small things regularly. Again, something that's in line with the deen. Allah loves the deeds that are done regularly, even if they're small. So it is the small deeds done regularly that have ultimately the biggest effect. So let's get into the book anyway. So the book, so in the book, there's basically 4 key points, and those, inshallah, time dependent, we're going to try and cover. So firstly, we talk about the power of the 1% change over time, which we've kind of covered, small but regular. Secondly, James Clear, the author, talks about how we should forget and just bin the idea of goals and focus on systems instead. This is something that's really, really impacted my life. Thirdly, the focus on identities rather than outcomes. And finally, what James Clear calls the 4 fundamental laws of behavior change. So the 1%, power of change over time, we've kind of covered that. It's basically, like he says in the book, if we can get 1% change, if we can get 1% better each day or for a year, we'll end up 37 times better than we already are, which is massive. But if we get 1% worse each day for a year, we'll reduce to almost to 0. So then he's talking about bad habits and getting rid of bad habits. So that 1% change either way can have an absolute massive effect if we look at it over the course of a year. And so, yeah, so it is about the tiny habits. And it's something that I really struggle with. I think it probably applies to many of us. We're so attuned, as I said before, in modern society to see instant gratification, that it's actually really hard to focus on things that have a long-term benefit. And equally, the slow rate of transformation also means that it's really easy to let bad habits creep in, like eating badly or not exercising, especially when you repeat the habit again and again and again. There's a quote in the book that says, let me find it. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. So good habits make time your ally, and bad habits make time your enemy.
Can you say that one more time, a bit slower, so I can
just process it.
My head.
Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. So basically, he's trying to say that if you are increasing your good habits by 1%, then that will lead to success. Whereas if you are going through a 1% negative change, that will lead to your failure. So kind of along those lines.
So incremental changes.
Exactly, incremental changes. And that's what he kind of means by the 1% change over time.
So it's, do you know, sometimes that phrase, the 1%, I often see like lots of quotes flying around the internet, sometimes saying 1% of people, only 1% of people can do this, and only 1% of people can discipline themselves like this. It's not talking about that 1% of people. It's talking about 1% changes in your life.
1% changes in your life.
Right.
So small deeds regularly, and 1% may seem so minute. It may seem so tiny, and often pointless. What's the point? What's the point in doing 1% change? But actually, if you're consistent with that little tiny change over the course of a year, the changes are massive. And the same goes with if you think, oh well, I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I'm only having that extra cup of coffee. I'm only having one more snack a day.
Oh, yeah.
Then obviously, it's only one more. But over the course of a year, obviously it's going to have a dramatic change. So that is the 1%. Obviously today we only have an hour, and so we are really just kind of just giving you guys a summary of the book. And we hope that this will encourage you to read it, because it's a really, really fantastic book. But the second key point from the book is to bin goals, as I said before. Just
bin goals?
Just bin the goals. Why? Forget goals, forget making goals, and focus on systems instead. Oh. So in the book, the author identifies 4 main problems with goal setting. I'm going to read them out. Firstly, he says, winners and losers have the same goals. Every Olympian wants the gold medal, and every candidate wants a job. And so it can't be the goal that differentiates people, because essentially, a lot of us have similar goals. So that's not the difference. That, as he said, that's not what differentiates people.
Before you go ahead, so I have an idea about what he's going to say.
Go on.
Without having read the book, but from what you described, people have goals, but people don't actualize their goals into reality because they haven't literally wrote them down or made it into a system for how they can achieve it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
I was nodding my head and I realized you can't see it. Yes, exactly. So what he says is, secondly, so achieving a goal is a momentary change. So when you've hit that goal, it's a momentary change. Sure, I might be able to pluck up the activation energy to bring myself to clean my room, for example. But if I continue to be, or if somebody continues to be a slob and keep to their bad habits and systems that let the room get messy in the first place, it's going to get messy again in a few days' time. So yeah, you could have the goal, I'm going to clean my room. That's fair enough. And maybe you'll get it. But if you don't implement certain systems, it's going to get messy. There's going to be a vicious circle because you haven't implemented that system for it to not get messy in the first place. That makes sense.
Right. So can I give an example of what, and tell me if I'm thinking this right. So a lot of people, most people, are always conscious about their health and fitness. Mm-hmm. We live in a day and age now where, being conscious of how your body looks, does it sort of fit the norm or, beauty standards that exist in the world today? Even if we look at contemporary affairs, like that whole Khloe Kardashian scandal about photoshopping their images and then being uncomfortable with their bodies. So we're so conscious in this day and age about people, how people look, and people might have a goal. Okay, I want to lose some weight, or I want to lose some fat off my body. But that's not good enough as a goal, because how are you going to make that a reality if you're not going to put a plan in place? Is this right? Am I thinking right?
You're literally.
Oh, right. So
you're way ahead. You're literally exactly what I have. You're mentioning. So yeah, that's spot on. Okay. That's exactly it. Because if you have that goal. If you want to use the example of losing weight, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. What was the Atkins? Do you remember when the Atkins diet?
20 years ago.
I'm going to do the Atkins diet, or whatever the trend diet is at the moment, and I'm going to lose the weight. Yeah, okay, you'll do the diet and you'll lose the weight. But if you haven't put a system in place and developed good habits, eating habits or exercise habits or whatever it may be, when you've kind of ditched the diet and completed it or whatever it may be, if you don't have those habits in place, you're going to go back. You're going to yo-yo back. Yeah, so
you're going to yo-yo.
You're going to yo-yo back, and your weight's going to yo-yo, and because you haven't put the systems in place. So he says goals are just a momentary change. If you don't have a system in place, if you don't develop good habits, then you're just going to go back, and it's going to be a vicious circle. So he argues that you should really just ditch the goals and implement the habits.
System. Okay.
Yeah. So and so that he also goes on to say goals restrict our happiness. So there's an assumption behind any goal that when we reach the goal, I'm going to be happy. So when I lose this weight, I'm going to be happy. When I finish this degree, I'm going to be happy. When I get this job, I'm going to be happy. But these are all temporary things. And so we end up continuously putting off happiness until the next milestone. We reach that one milestone, we achieve that goal. But then there's another goal, and then there's another goal. So he ultimately...
But the goalposts of your goals and ambitions keep changing. So once you reach that next step in your plan, your master plan in life, then you're still not going to be satisfied.
And therefore attaching your happiness to that means that you're never going to be happy, because the happiness is moving along with the goalposts, if that makes sense.
Do you know what this reminds me of? That hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. I'm trying to paraphrase on top of my head, but it goes something like this. The son of Adam, or the children of Adam, will never be happy, because even if you were to be given a mountain, they couldn't have Uhud. So Uhud, there was a mountain in Arabia. If the son of Adam was to be given a mountain in gold equivalent to the size of Uhud, you wouldn't be satisfied. They wouldn't be satisfied until they had another mountain the same size. Again, it just shows that how we're never satisfied, are we? So is it the author, James Clear, is he saying basically that, if you set a goal and you might achieve one part of that goal, it's a false sense of accomplishment because you haven't actually fulfilled it, and you're not going to truly fulfill it if you end up going back to your previous way. Like the example of your weight.
Exactly. And it's also attaching happiness to things. Happiness doesn't lie in achieving those goals and those milestones, and it's finding where actually true happiness lies and contentment. So that's what he says. He says he tells us to ditch the goal and that they restrict our happiness. He also says that...
I'm sorry, before you continue, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We've got a really good, interesting, insightful comment from Dawa fan. They've said, I was a slob when it comes to house chores. So I started to clean for just 10 minutes a day, and over 1 to 2 months, it increased naturally. And now my flat is relatively clean compared to average single guys.
That is such a brilliant habit. I mean, from other books and videos that I've watched, just doing, especially in relation to cleaning, I have a weird, strange obsession with watching clean with me videos, or how life hacks on how to clean your house. And a lot of the most successful people, the people that have kind of got their house down, is just doing 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They even set a timer, and I've done this actually myself, and it helps. I don't know if it's because I'm a little bit competitive as well, so it's against the time, but they set a 10-minute, 15-minute timer and just do a speed clean. And it goes back to that small and often, rather than saying, okay, I'm going to do a deep clean every Sunday or whatever, and that becomes impractical, overwhelming, unrealistic. Doing those, 10 minutes every so often, or even every day, is, I think, definitely beneficial.
That reminds me of people who want instant gratification versus delayed gratification. So I know, for example, what you're describing, Mariam, that if you force yourself, or you discipline yourself, force is not the right terminology in terms of our mindsets, but it is actually correct. Technically, we are forcing ourselves. Do you know when you discipline yourself to do something, even though you don't want to, that's what you call discipline? So this example of doing 10 minutes, like Dawa fan says 10 minutes a day, or you're doing 15, 20 minutes a day, every single day, you're focusing on something that you really can't be bothered to do, but you discipline yourself, or you force yourself to do it. It means that you are going to be satisfied generally throughout the week and throughout the rest of the month, because you're keeping, in the example of house cleanliness, you're keeping on top of the cleanliness of your house. Whereas if you have a mad rush because you've got a guest coming over and you're running around the house trying to sort of do your tidying and cleaning up, you're going to feel more drained. Your energy is going to be depleted. You're going to feel stressed. You might feel instantly happy because by the end of that 2-3 hour massive rush to clean the house up, you might feel satisfied. But what's going to happen is that you're going to sort of end up falling back into the bad habits of letting you get to that state to begin with. Whereas if you just keep on top of it by these little slow 10-minute incremental things every day, it means that you're not going to have that mad rush, and you're going to have a better satisfaction generally, because you can come home from work or the end of a long day to a house that you feel happy coming home to because you've already kept on top of it throughout the week. every single day. Like it's those little habits I think that are building up, and these are really good examples in terms of, you know, in terms of household chores.
No, I agree. And actually, two more points on that is within the kind of, you know, realm of productivity tips. The two other points I would say regarding cleaning your house and doing it in 10 minutes is when you do it like that, firstly, it's less overwhelming, so you're more likely to do it. If I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna clean my whole house today, or I'm gonna do like a good couple of hours cleaning, you're less likely to actually get up and do it. Whereas if you say to yourself, I'm gonna do 10 minutes, it's a lot more easier and manageable to kind of process and come to terms with. But then also on top of that, I mean, that's the first step. You know, 10 minutes seems realistic, seems doable, you do it. But then also there's that momentum. Once you're up and you're doing it, usually what happens is you're happy to continue. The hardest part is actually starting anything, and that's something else
so true.
that comes up in other books as well that we're going to cover. Is the hardest part is starting. You just need to make starting easy, make the habits attractive and accessible, as we'll get on to, and then the rest actually you'll find. I mean, even if you don't, it's fine. I mean, you've hit your target of 10 minutes. But generally, I think a lot of us find that once we start it, that's the hardest thing. When we're kind of in the mode, then it's like, oh, I'll just do a little bit more. I'll just do a little bit more. Yeah. And you do become more productive in that sense. So yeah, jazakallah khair for that. So it's a really good point. But finally, what James Clear says in the book is that with regards to goals are at odds with long-term progress, which is really interesting because
sorry. Goals are at odds with
long-term progress.
Okay, yeah.
So what he says in the book, I've got a quote here: the purpose of setting goals is to win the game, but the purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. So there's a clip I saw of James saying it's the idea between the system and the goal. Say you're playing a sport, for example, and in every sport the goal is to have the best score on the scoreboard at the end of the game. But it would be ridiculous to spend the whole game looking at the scoreboard, because it wouldn't help you just like constantly looking at the scoreboard. So in fact, if you just ignore the scoreboard entirely and focus on playing the game well, you'd probably end up with a better score. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so he says so that's kind of the point. Do you have anything to say on that? Do you get it? Are you still processing it?
I'm still processing that. So can you just say that quote one more time for me?
Yeah. So he says the purpose of setting goals is to win the game.
To win the game.
Yes, but the purpose of building systems is to continuously play the game. So it was the first point where if you're pitching your success on that milestone, that goal, winning the game, you're going to win it. But the better thing for all of us is not just to win one game; it's to continuously be in the game and continuously progress.
That makes sense.
That makes sense, and that's why for him, he's like, just bin goals. Goals are not the one. Despite what we've been told, like for years and years, set goals, set targets. The thing that he's pushing is to set systems and habits, which we'll get on to, and I kind of agree with.
Do you think that's harder? Like, is that why? Is this the reason why he said? I don't know. I haven't read the book, but I'm going to order it straight after this, and then I'll inshallah have read the whole thing by next Wednesday.
I have the audio book if you'd like.
Have you? So is he basically saying that the reason why people fail at goals is because it's unfulfillable, because they can't discipline themselves enough? Hence, you should alter it into habits and systems, because people can implement something that they have to do habitually, whereas a goal is too vague because most people can't discipline themselves.
Pretty much, and also that systems have more of a long-term effect, whereas a goal is just like a one-off instant gratification, and then you're back at square one. If you can do anything to achieve that goal and you've achieved it, but the success isn't just in achieving the goals, it's building habits so that you can
sustain
sustainability. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of his point on goals. He goes on next. Before we go on to the next point, do you have anything on the social media?
No, just someone has said listening to a surah. So in terms of Islamic goals, listening to surahs rather than nasheeds. This way you can make a new habit. Plus you get to memorize a new surah each time. I think this is really interesting.
Really good.
Do you know, especially in this day and age where people might be addicted to things like music, and obviously in the month of Ramadan, a lot of people find it easier to give up or restrict or restrain the amount of music they listen to. One of the ways they do that is but it's like a step-by-step sort of program in terms of music. Okay, reduce music, Ramadan's easy, great, okay, tick number one. Next sort of tick would be, if they're not willing to listen to Quran, they listen to a nasheed. which doesn't have musical instruments in it. So that's tick number 2. And then some people will skip that step and go straight to number 3, which would be listening to Quran. And then from Quran, that's not just the end goal, it's replacing music with Quran. It's okay, well, what are you going to do with the Quran that you're listening to? Then, as this commenter has said, you can actually start to benefit from that now, from replacing one bad habit with a good habit. And now you can not just listen to Quran, but you can try to memorize it. And as we know, the virtues of memorizing the Quran are numerous. And then when you can not just memorize it, but you're going to increase in your recitation, which again, the whole purpose of the Quran is to be recited, literally what the Quran means, that which is recited, or the recitation. So actually, this is like a really good example that this person's given here about, music versus Quran, or nasheeds versus Quran, in terms of how to build up habits, because now your goal is going to be constantly shifting, but in a good way, because now you can people can become hafiz of the Quran, but they think it's an unattainable goal because they don't actually they limit people. As people, we limit ourselves sometimes in terms of what we think we can achieve, what we think is achievable. People all the time are learning new languages, even as adults, because they're disciplining themselves to be able to do that. And I think this is probably one of the things that this book is pointing towards, is disciplining yourself in terms of building up these habits. But you can only build up a habit if you start, if that makes sense.
No, that's completely spot on. The next one, and I don't know how long we've got left. We don't have much time left. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to speed through this. This is it. Well, everybody's probably thinking, okay, that makes sense. Bin the goals, small habits, small things regularly. But how do we build those habits in the first place? How do we overcome the difficulties? So the process he described in the book has 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. So the first cue is relating to our environment and the cues around us. So, for example, in my own personal experience, is taking supplements. I have vitamin D deficiency. I think a lot of people of color do, and taking those supplements was always really difficult. And it was because they were in the kitchen. They're in the kitchen cupboard, out of sight, out of mind. But now I have that cue. Now my supplements are on my bedside table. So every morning, when I have my water, my supplements are there. So the cue is there. It's about making good habits really easily accessible. And so you basically want to put fewer habits between you and the good habit that you're wanting to kind of implement. This isn't really mentioned in the book, or from what I can remember, but also I just put here as a little note: grouping habits. Grouping good habits is also a fantastic tip. So for example, I don't drink that much water, but because I've got my water there and my supplements, I use that as an opportunity to really hydrate as well and have a good water intake when I wake up. So yeah, if that makes sense. Making good habits easy and accessible. Can you think of anything else?
It's just funny that you mentioned vitamin D, because I used to keep my vitamin D next to my bedside table. You had to move it to your bedside table to make it accessible for you. Yeah. For me, it was inside my bedside table and I still ignored it. So what I have to do now is put reminders on my phone, like calendar reminders, and it comes as a pop-up. Don't forget to take your vitamin D tomorrow.
Okay, so that is great. That is reminding yourself. It's a cue. Did you say that your vitamin D was inside your bedside cabinet?
Yeah, like it's right next to me in my bedroom where I'm all the time working, sleeping.
See, what I would say is mine were inside, but I put mine on top. No. So it's right there in my face. I can't avoid it. So that's probably what I would say with regards to improving. Put your supplements on top. Can't think of any other examples, but essentially just making habits easier and allowing yourself to have those cues.
But can I just take another example? And if we run out of time, we can sort of do a recap for next week and then continue off rather than rushing. So I was just thinking, for me, one of the things that I've been consistent with so far since January this year is like fitness. So one of the things that I've done to make fitness easy for me to sort of achieve, because for me, fitness is not just like hitting a goal of losing weight and then that's it. I want it to be something consistent, so I have energy throughout the rest of my life, inshallah, until in old age. So one of the things I did was make fitness something I want to look forward to doing rather than looking like a chore. So I've invested in gym clothes, equipment, or the workout clothes, basically, because obviously we're in lockdown and stuff. So working out at home, making it enjoyable, treating myself to like different equipment, home gym equipment, so that now when I put in my head the time to get invest in myself and doing a workout, I look forward to it, because now I deserve to work out using the equipment that I've actually had to buy. So it's one of those things that I know that I can be consistent with, and alhamdulillah, I have been consistent with that. Ramadan is going to sort of have a toll on me right now.
Yeah,
Like I'm
fair enough.
making the intention to do a workout and then like just feeling like you're going to fizzle out at the end. But I think for me personally, it's like making it something you want to look forward to. Like the example that we gave before of cleaning your house, making it part of that mindset of like, I want to be happy when I come home. So what can I do to be happy? I'm going to do something that I don't normally want to do. I'm going to do it anyways. And that's one of the ways I build up habits.
Are you sure you didn't write this book?
I know.
Because no, honestly, the second law is to make the habit attractive.
Oh.
You literally, mashallah, like literally just described the second law completely. And I had the example of working out as well. And your example actually with workout here is a lot better. Mine is I allow myself to have a really long shower or bath. And that's my treat. I know that, okay, when I have a workout, I'm going to do that. And so making them attractive. So I think that was a perfect example and summary of his second law. So his third law is...
Mariam, sorry to interrupt you. How many laws are there altogether?
4.
So I'm just conscious that there's another show 6. And we've got one last comment. Gigi says, I used Telegram reminders. So for those of you that don't know, Telegram is like another version of WhatsApp, but apparently it's better. I think it is better. I used to have it. But then I had to delete it because no one else had the app at the time, as it allows you scheduled messages. So these are really good, like sort of suggestions and ideas. So
inshallah,
we'll pick up next time. Is that okay?
Inshallah, we will pick up next time. But assalamu alaikum, jazakallah khair for all your comments and interactions, and inshallah we'll continue next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.